The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Berkeley University's lecture hall as students shuffled into their seats. Professor Gregory Martinez adjusted his thick glasses and smoothed down his gray hair, preparing for what he considered his most entertaining lecture of the semester. Today's topic was mathematics in popular culture, and he had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. Martinez had always been a bitter man. Despite his impressive credentials and years of teaching advanced calculus, he felt overlooked by the academic world. His research papers rarely received recognition, and younger professors seemed to get all the attention. This lecture was his chance to feel superior, to remind everyone why he was the expert and others were merely pretenders. In the back row, a quiet man in his late 50s sat alone, wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans. His dark hair was slightly messy and he kept his head down, scribbling notes in a worn notebook. To everyone else, he was just another graduate student named Ken Rivers. Nobody recognized the face that had appeared in countless movies over the past 3 decades. Keanu Reeves had been attending university lectures for years, moving from campus to campus under different names. His passion for learning had grown, stronger with age, and mathematics had become his secret obsession. He found peace in numbers, in the pure logic of equations that made sense when the world often did not. Lisa Carter, a bright undergraduate student, sat 2 seats away from the mysterious Ken Rivers. She had noticed him in several lectures over the past month. He never spoke, never asked questions, but she could see him working through complex problems in his notebook with surprising skill. Professor Martinez cleared his throat and began his lecture. Today we discuss how Hollywood has butchered mathematics. For entertainment purposes, he announced with obvious pleasure. These actors pretend to be geniuses on screen, but they could not solve a basic equation if their lives depended on it. He clicked to his first slide, showing a scene from a popular science fiction movie. Look at this nonsense, he continued, his voice dripping with contempt. They have actors spouting mathematical gibberish that sounds impressive but means absolutely nothing. The students listened politely, though many seemed uncomfortable with their professor's harsh tone. Martinez was just getting started, and do not get me started on action movies where the hero suddenly becomes a mathematical genius, he said, pacing back and forth. Take someone like Keanu Reeves, for example. The man has the emotional range of a wooden board and the mathematical understanding of a 5-year-old child. In the back row, Keanu's pen stopped moving. He looked up for the first time, his calm brown eyes focusing on the professor. Martinez continued his attack, oblivious to his target sitting just meters away. I have seen this actor in interviews. He speaks slowly, as if his brain is struggling to form basic thoughts. Yet Hollywood expects us to believe he could play a genius scientist or solve complex problems. It is laughable. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even those who were not fans of the actor found the personal attacks unprofessional. The man probably could not even solve a basic derivative, Martinez declared with a cruel smile. These celebrities live in a fantasy world where looking confused passes for deep thinking. Lisa Carter glanced at Ken Rivers and noticed his jaw had tightened. She had never seen him show any emotion before, but something about the professor's words seemed to affect him. Martinez walked to the whiteboard and began writing a complex equation. Since we are discussing mathematical pretenders, let me show you what real mathematics looks like, he said. This is an advanced integration problem involving multivariable calculus and differential equations. The equation filled half the board, with multiple integral signs, Greek letters, and complex fractions that made most students' heads spin. Martinez stepped back to admire his work. I doubt anyone in Hollywood could even pronounce half these symbols, let alone understand what they mean, he said smugly. This is why we have real mathematicians and fake ones. The real ones spend years studying these concepts, while the fake ones just memorize lines written by actual intelligent people. In the back row, Keanu studied the equation for a moment, then began working in his notebook. His pen moved steadily across the page, breaking down the problem step by step. Lisa watched in amazement as he seemed to solve the complex integration without any hesitation. Professor Martinez was still talking, unaware that his impossible problem was being solved just a few meters away. Of course, this particular equation has stumped many graduate students. It requires advanced techniques that take years to master. Keanu finished his work and leaned back in his chair. The solution was elegant, using a substitution method that simplified the entire problem. He had learned this technique years ago while studying with a retired MIT professor who had become a close friend. Lisa could not believe what she had just witnessed. She leaned closer to Ken and whispered, "Did you just solve that?" Keanu looked at her and nodded slightly. His notebook showed not just the correct answer, but 3 different methods of reaching the same solution. Each approach demonstrated a deep understanding of mathematical principles that went far beyond what most graduate students could achieve. "That is incredible," Lisa whispered, forgetting to keep her voice down. Professor Martinez stopped talking and turned toward the back of the classroom. "Miss Carter, do you have something to share with the class?" Lisa's face turned red. Ken here solved your equation." The professor's eyes narrowed. "I am sorry, what did you say?" "Ken Rivers solved the problem you wrote on the board," Lisa repeated, her voice stronger now. Martinez walked slowly toward the back row, his expression a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. "Mr. Rivers, is that correct? You believe you have solved this equation?" Keanu looked up calmly. "Yes, sir." "Show me your work," Martinez demanded, extending his hand for the notebook. Keanu hesitated for a moment, then tore out the page and handed it over. Martinez studied the solution, his face growing pale as he realized the work was not only correct but demonstrated mathematical sophistication he had not expected from any student. "Where did you copy this from?" Martinez asked sharply. "I did not copy it," Keanu replied quietly. "I solved it using substitution and integration by parts." The professor's face flushed with anger. "No one solves problems like this in their head. You must have seen this equation before or looked up the answer somehow." Keanu remained calm despite the accusation. "Would you like me to show you how I did it?" Martinez felt his authority being challenged in front of his students. This nobody was making him look foolish, and he could not allow that. "Fine," he said coldly. "Come to the front and show us your supposed solution. Let us see if you can explain what you claim to have accomplished." As Keanu stood up and walked toward the whiteboard, he had no idea that his simple desire to learn was about to change everything. The quiet man in the black hoodie was about to reveal abilities that would shake the foundations of human understanding and attract attention from places far beyond Earth. Keanu walked slowly to the front of the classroom, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every student's eyes followed him as he approached the whiteboard. Professor Martinez stood with his arms crossed, a smug expression on his face as he waited for this mysterious student to embarrass himself. The equation on the board looked like a monster of mathematical symbols. Most students could barely understand what they were looking at, let alone solve it. But Keanu studied it for only a moment before picking up a marker. "The key to this problem is recognizing the pattern," Keanu said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Most people see all these symbols and feel overwhelmed. But every complex equation is just simple parts working together." He began writing on a clean section of the board, his handwriting neat and confident. "First, we can use substitution to simplify this integral. Let u equal this expression here." He circled a portion of the original equation and wrote his substitution. Below it, Lisa Carter leaned forward in her seat, fascinated. She had struggled with basic calculus, but somehow Ken's explanation made sense. He broke down each step so clearly that even she could follow along. Professor Martinez watched with growing unease. The solution was not only correct, but elegant. This student was using advanced techniques that Martinez himself had trouble teaching to his graduate students. "Next, we apply integration by parts," Keanu continued, writing the formula on the board. "This is where many students get confused, but if you remember the pattern, it becomes straightforward." He worked through the integration step by step, showing how each transformation simplified the problem. The complex equation began to shrink into something manageable, then into something simple. And finally, Keanu said, writing the final answer, "We get this result." The classroom was completely silent. Even students who barely understood calculus could see that something remarkable had just happened. The impossible equation had been solved as if it were a simple homework problem. Professor Martinez felt his face burning with embarrassment and anger. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph, his chance to show off his expertise. Instead, some unknown graduate student had made him look like a fool. "Very impressive," Martinez said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "But anyone can memorize a solution and present it. True mathematical understanding requires more than just following steps." Keanu turned to face the professor, his expression still calm and patient. "Would you like me to solve it using a different method?" "What?" Martinez blinked in surprise. "There are several ways to approach this problem," Keanu explained. "I can show you at least 2 other methods that will give the same answer." Before Martinez could respond, Keanu moved to another section of the whiteboard. He began writing again, this time using a completely different approach involving complex variable theory. Lisa Carter pulled out her phone and started recording. She had a feeling she was witnessing something historic, something that needed to be preserved. As Keanu worked through the second solution, other students began taking pictures and recording videos. They might not understand the mathematics, but they recognized genius when they saw it. The second solution was even more elegant than the first. Keanu used techniques that most of the students had never seen before, transforming the complex integral into a simple geometric problem. "This method shows the connection between calculus and geometry," Keanu explained as he worked. "Mathematics is not just about numbers and formulas. It is about understanding the patterns that connect everything in the universe." Professor Martinez felt his world crumbling around him. He had spent decades studying mathematics, had written papers, and taught thousands of students. Yet this stranger was demonstrating a level of understanding that made Martinez feel like a beginner. "Stop," Martinez said sharply. "This is enough." But Keanu was already starting on a third solution. "This last method uses differential equations," he said, ignoring the professor's command. "It is more advanced, but it reveals something beautiful about the nature of change and motion." As he wrote, the third solution began to take shape. This one was the most sophisticated of all, involving concepts that were typically reserved for advanced graduate courses. Yet Keanu explained each step as if he were discussing the weather. Some students had stopped taking notes and were simply staring in amazement. Tony Garcia, a journalism student who had been taking the class as an elective, realized he was witnessing something that would make an incredible story. Professor Martinez could not take any more humiliation. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the lecture hall. "I do not know who you are or where you learned these tricks, but this is my classroom." Keanu set down the marker and turned to face the angry professor. "I apologize if I have caused any offense. I was simply trying to answer your question." "My question?" Martinez laughed bitterly. "I never asked you to show off. I asked you to explain your solution, not to perform mathematical magic tricks." "These are not tricks," Keanu said gently. "They are just different ways of looking at the same problem. Mathematics is like a language. There are many ways to say the same thing." The comparison only made Martinez angrier. "Do not lecture me about mathematics, Mr. Rivers. I have been teaching this subject since before you were born." "Lisa," Carter found her voice. "But Professor, he solved a problem that you said was impossible for most graduate students. And he did it 3 different ways." "Quiet, Miss Carter," Martinez snapped. "This student has obviously prepared for this moment. He probably looked up these solutions online or copied them from a textbook." Keanu shook his head. "I have never seen this particular equation before today, but the principles are familiar. Once you understand the underlying patterns, most problems become manageable." Martinez felt a chill run down his spine. The way this student spoke about mathematics was different from anyone he had ever encountered. There was a depth of understanding that went beyond mere technical skill, but his pride would not let him admit defeat. Instead, he decided to escalate the confrontation. "Very well, Mr. Rivers," Martinez said, moving to a clean section of the whiteboard. "If you are such a mathematical genius, let me give you a real challenge." He began writing a new equation, this one even more complex than the first. It involved multiple variables, advanced calculus, and concepts from theoretical physics. As he wrote, he explained what he was doing. This equation has puzzled mathematicians for years, Martinez said. It involves applications of the Riemann hypothesis to quantum mechanics. Even professional researchers struggle with problems like this. The new equation filled the entire whiteboard. It looked like something from an advanced physics textbook, full of symbols that most students had never seen before. Martinez stepped back and smiled coldly. "There, Mr. Rivers. Show us how you solve that." The classroom held its breath. Even Lisa Carter, who had been impressed by Ken's earlier work, doubted that anyone could solve such a complex problem on the spot. But Keanu simply studied the equation for a moment, then nodded slowly. "This is interesting," he said. "It combines several different areas of mathematics. May I use the other whiteboard?" Before Martinez could answer, Keanu moved to the second whiteboard and began writing. As he worked, something strange began to happen. The air in the room seemed to change, becoming charged with an energy that no one could explain. Outside the building, sensitive instruments at the physics department began detecting unusual readings. Strange electromagnetic signatures were emanating from the mathematics building, signatures that had never been recorded before. Far above the Earth, in the darkness of space, ancient sensors suddenly came alive after centuries of dormancy. Signals began transmitting across the galaxy, carrying a simple message. The mathematical awakening had begun. As Keanu began working on the impossible equation, the lights in the lecture hall started to flicker. Students looked around nervously, but their attention quickly returned to the whiteboard, where Ken Rivers was writing symbols and formulas at an incredible speed. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Lisa Carter felt the hair on her arms standing up, as if the room had been filled with static electricity. Other students began to notice the strange sensation too. Some pulled out their phones to check if there was a storm approaching, but the weather apps showed clear skies. Professor Martinez watched in growing amazement and fear as Keanu transformed the impossible equation step by step. The problem that had stumped professional mathematicians for decades was being solved by a quiet graduate student in a hoodie. But something else was happening. Something that made Martinez's skin crawl with an inexplicable dread. 300 miles above Earth, Captain Alex Porter was reviewing routine reports on the bridge of the UES Discovery, humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. The ship had been monitoring communication signals from various star systems when suddenly every screen on the bridge lit up with urgent alerts. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the communications station, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from unknown sources. The signals are coming from all directions, sir." Porter moved quickly to the main display. "What kind of transmissions?" "They appear to be mathematical in nature, sir. Complex equations and formulas that our computers cannot fully decode. But there is something else." Brooks paused, his face pale. "The signals started exactly 4 minutes ago, and they all seem to be pointing toward Earth." Dr. Amanda Brooks, the ship's chief science officer and Danny's sister, rushed onto the bridge carrying a tablet full of data. "Captain, you need to see this. Our sensors are detecting massive energy fluctuations coming from the surface of Earth. The readings are unlike anything we have ever recorded." Porter studied the data, his expression growing serious. "Where exactly are these readings coming from?" "Berkeley, California, sir. Specifically from the university campus. The energy signature is growing stronger by the minute." Before Porter could respond, the main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing star charts, it now displayed an image that made everyone on the bridge freeze in shock. An alien face was looking back at them, with large golden eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer like metal. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Discovery," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Commander Kyrath of the Zephyrian Mathematics Council. We have been waiting a very long time for this moment." Back in the lecture hall, Keanu was halfway through solving the equation when he suddenly stopped. He looked around the room with a confused expression, as if he had heard something that no one else could detect. "Are you having trouble, Mr. Rivers?" Professor Martinez asked with renewed confidence. Perhaps this problem is too difficult even for your supposed genius. But Keanu was not listening. He could hear something, a faint whisper in his mind, that sounded like voices speaking in mathematical formulas. The sensation was strange but not unpleasant, like remembering a song from childhood that you had forgotten you knew. On the Discovery, Commander Kyrath continued speaking to the stunned human crew. For over 2,000 of your years, the Zephyrian people have been monitoring the mathematical development of species throughout this galaxy. We are part of what you might call the Galactic Mathematics Society, a union of civilizations that have achieved true understanding of the universe's numerical nature. Captain Porter found his voice. Why are you contacting us now? Because one of your kind has just begun solving the universal equations, Kyrath explained. These are mathematical formulas that describe the fundamental structure of reality itself. Only species that can comprehend these equations are ready to join galactic civilization. Dr. Amanda Brooks stepped forward. You mentioned someone on Earth is solving these equations. How is that possible? Our most advanced mathematicians barely understand basic quantum mechanics. The alien's expression changed to something that might have been amusement. Your species has always underestimated its own potential. The individual currently working on the universal equations was chosen long ago, though he does not remember the selection process. Chosen by whom? Porter asked. By us. When he was a child, we enhanced his mathematical intuition through careful genetic adjustment. It was subtle, designed to appear as natural talent. We have done this with several individuals throughout human history, waiting for the right moment when one would be ready to make the breakthrough. In the lecture hall, Keanu had resumed working on the equation, but now his movements were different. His hand moved across the whiteboard as if guided by an invisible force. The mathematical symbols he was writing became more complex, incorporating formulas that did not exist in any human textbook. Lisa Carter was recording everything on her phone, but the camera kept malfunctioning. The image would blur whenever Ken wrote certain symbols, as if the mathematics itself was too advanced for the technology to capture. This is impossible, Professor Martinez whispered, staring at the whiteboard. The equation was being solved, but the solution involved concepts that went far beyond anything he had learned in 30 years of studying mathematics. Tony Garcia, the journalism student, was also trying to record the event, but his equipment was having the same problems as Lisa's. Something is jamming our electronics, he muttered. Meanwhile, other strange things were happening around the campus. In the physics building, every computer screen was displaying the same mathematical formulas that Keanu was writing. The chemistry lab's equipment was registering impossible energy readings. Even the campus power grid was fluctuating in patterns that matched the rhythm of Keanu's writing. Back on the Discovery, Commander Kyrath was explaining more about the Galactic Mathematics Society. Mathematics is not just a tool for calculation, the alien said. It is the fundamental language of existence itself. Species that truly understand this language can manipulate reality in ways that seem impossible to others. You mean like faster than light? Travel? Dr. Brooks asked. That is merely the beginning. With complete mastery of the universal equations, a civilization can control gravity, manipulate time, and even create new forms of matter. But such power requires wisdom and restraint, which is why we test species before allowing them to join us. Captain Porter felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What happens if humanity fails this test? Kyrath's expression became serious. Then your species will remain isolated on your home planet until you naturally develop the necessary understanding, which typically takes several thousand more years. However, if you succeed, humanity will be welcomed into a community of civilizations that spans the entire galaxy. In the lecture hall, Keanu was approaching the final steps of the solution. The energy in the room had become so intense that several students were feeling dizzy. The whiteboard itself seemed to be glowing faintly around the mathematical symbols. Ken, Lisa Carter called out, her voice filled with concern. Are you feeling all right? Keanu turned to look at her, and for a moment his eyes seemed to glow with the same faint light as the whiteboard. I can see it, he said quietly. The pattern that connects everything. Mathematics is not just numbers and formulas. It is the blueprint of reality itself. Professor Martinez backed away from the whiteboard, fear replacing his earlier anger. "What are you?" he whispered. Before Keanu could answer, the lecture hall was suddenly filled with a brilliant blue light. Students screamed and covered their eyes as a massive ship appeared in the sky above the campus, visible through the tall windows. The vessel was unlike anything in human technology, its surface covered with the same mathematical symbols that Keanu had been writing. "The test has begun," Kyrath announced to the crew of the Discovery. "Your species' future will be determined by what happens in that classroom over the next few hours. We hope your chosen one is ready for what comes next." As the alien ship hovered over Berkeley University, every mathematician on Earth felt a strange pull in their minds. Something was calling to them, inviting them to join in a calculation that would change the course of human history forever. The blue light from the alien ship above Berkeley University caught the attention of more than just the students in the lecture hall. 30 miles away in a secret government facility hidden beneath the San Francisco Bay, alarms began blaring. Throughout the underground complex, Agent Ryan Clark was reviewing routine surveillance reports when every screen in the monitoring center suddenly displayed the same message. Code 7 alert. Anomalous individual detected. Location: Berkeley. University threat level maximum. Clark had been with the Department of Unusual Phenomena for 15 years, and he had never seen a Code 7 alert. According to the protocols, such alerts were reserved for individuals displaying impossible abilities that could threaten national security. "Sir," called out Technician Ben Martinez from across the room, "we are getting readings that do not make sense. The energy signatures coming from the university campus are off the charts." Clark moved quickly to the main display terminal. "Show me everything we have." The screens filled with data streams, satellite images, and electromagnetic readings. All of it pointed to one location, a mathematics lecture hall where something extraordinary was happening. "There is more, sir," Ben continued. "We have facial recognition on the individual at the center of the disturbance. You are not going to believe this." A clear image appeared on the screen showing Keanu Reeves standing at a whiteboard covered in complex mathematical equations. Clark stared at the image for several seconds, trying to process what he was seeing. "The actor?" Clark asked in disbelief. "It appears so, sir. But according to our analysis, he is demonstrating mathematical abilities that should be impossible for any human being. Our computers cannot even understand some of the formulas he is writing." Clark felt a chill run down his spine. For years, his department had been tracking individuals with unusual abilities, but they had always been small-scale phenomena. People who could predict lottery numbers or solve puzzles faster than normal. Nothing like this. "Contact Director Shaw immediately," Clark ordered. "Tell her we have a Code 7 situation that requires immediate containment." Meanwhile, in the lecture hall, the situation was becoming more chaotic by the minute. The alien ship hovering above the campus was now clearly visible to everyone, and news helicopters were beginning to arrive. Students were recording everything on their phones, despite the fact that their devices kept malfunctioning whenever they tried to capture the mathematical equations. Lisa Carter was one of the few people still focused on what Keanu was doing at the whiteboard. While other students were panicking about the alien ship, she could see that Ken was approaching something important. The equation was almost complete, and she could sense that the solution would change everything. "Ken," she called out over the noise of frightened students, "are you okay?" Keanu turned to look at her, his eyes still glowing with that strange light. "I can feel them," he said quietly. "There are others like me, scattered around the world. They are all working on pieces of the same puzzle." Professor Martinez, who had been cowering near his desk, suddenly stood up with a determined expression. He pulled out a special phone that Lisa had never seen before and dialed a number. "This is Agent Martinez," he said into the phone. "The asset has been activated. Yes, I know this was not part of the original timeline. Something has accelerated the process." Lisa stared at her professor in shock. "Agent Martinez? What are you talking about?" Martinez ignored her question and continued his phone conversation. I need immediate extraction for the mathematical data. The subject has solved equations that were supposed to remain secret for another decade. Tony Garcia, the journalism student, overheard the conversation and realized that something much bigger was happening. He started recording Martinez's phone call, sensing that this was part of a larger conspiracy. Across the country, in a glass office building in Washington, D.C., Director Helen Shaw was reviewing the reports from Berkeley with growing concern. Shaw had been running shadow operations for 20 years, and her organization had spent decades suppressing advanced human capabilities to maintain social stability. "Ma'am," her assistant reported, "Agent Martinez confirms that Subject K7 has begun demonstrating his full abilities ahead of schedule. The alien contact was not anticipated." Shaw studied the satellite images on her desk. The alien ship was a complication she had not prepared for. Her organization had known about individuals like Keanu for years, but they had always been able to keep such people under control through careful manipulation of their environments. "Activate the containment protocol," Shaw ordered. "I want Subject K7 and all witnesses brought in immediately, and get me a direct line to Agent Clark. This situation cannot be allowed to become public." Back at Berkeley, Agent Clark was already mobilizing a response team. Black SUVs were racing toward the campus from multiple directions, carrying agents equipped with technology designed to suppress unusual abilities. "Remember," Clark spoke into his radio, "the primary objective is to secure Subject K7 and confiscate all recordings of the event. Secondary objective is to discredit any witnesses who cannot be contained." But Clark and his team were not the only ones responding to the situation. On the Discovery, Captain Porter had been monitoring communications from Earth and had detected the government response. "Dr. Brooks," Porter called out, "I am picking up military-style communications from the surface. It appears that Earth's governments are mobilizing against the individual solving the universal equations." Dr. Amanda Brooks looked up from her instruments with concern. "That could be a problem. Commander Kyrath warned us that internal conflicts could prevent humanity from passing the test." Porter opened a communication channel to the alien vessel hovering over Berkeley. "Commander Kyrath, we have a situation developing. Human authorities appear to be moving to interfere with your chosen individual." The alien's response was immediate. "This is unfortunate, but not unexpected. Many species face this challenge. During their mathematical awakening, those in power often fear the changes that true understanding brings." In the lecture hall, Keanu was now working on the final section of the universal equation. The mathematical symbols he was writing seemed to pulse with their own energy, and the air around the whiteboard was shimmering like heat waves. Lisa Carter noticed that some students were starting to understand parts of the equation, as if Keanu's work was somehow awakening mathematical abilities in others. She found herself following complex calculations that should have been far beyond her understanding. "This is incredible," she whispered to Tony Garcia. "I think I am actually understanding some of this advanced mathematics." Tony was experiencing the same phenomenon. "It is like the equations are teaching themselves to us," he replied. Professor Martinez finished his phone call and approached Keanu with a nervous expression. "Ken, I think you should stop what you are doing. This has gone far enough." Keanu did not turn around. "I cannot stop now. The equation is almost complete and there are people depending on this solution." "What people?" Martinez demanded. "Everyone on Earth," Keanu replied simply. "This equation will give humanity access to technologies that could solve all of our energy problems, allow us to travel to other star systems and join a community of civilizations that spans the galaxy." Martinez felt his resolve weakening. The organization he worked for had convinced him that suppressing such abilities was necessary for social stability. But seeing the potential benefits of what Keanu was accomplishing made him question everything he had believed. Outside the lecture hall, the first wave of government agents was arriving on campus. They moved quickly through the hallways, evacuating other classrooms and setting up a perimeter around the mathematics building. Agent Clark spoke into his radio as he approached the lecture hall. "All units in position. Prepare for containment of Subject K7 and all witnesses." But as Clark reached for the door handle, he hesitated. Through the small window, he could see Keanu at the whiteboard, completely focused on completing the equation. There was something about the scene that made Clark question his orders for the first time in his career. Above them all, the alien ship continued to hover silently, waiting to see whether humanity would choose knowledge and growth or fear and control. The next few minutes would determine the course of human civilization for generations to come. Agent Ryan Clark stood frozen outside the lecture hall door, his hand still reaching for the handle. Through the small window, he could see Keanu working on the final parts of the equation, completely unaware of the government forces surrounding the building. For the first time in 15 years of service, Clark found himself questioning his orders. Inside the lecture hall, Keanu suddenly stopped writing and turned to face the room full of frightened students. The strange glow in his eyes had grown brighter, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight and authority that made everyone listen. "I need to tell you all something," Keanu said, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the chaos around them. "My name is not Ken Rivers. I am Keanu Reeves, and I have been hiding my true abilities for most of my life." Lisa Carter gasped, though part of her had already suspected the truth. "The actor? But how can you solve these impossible equations?" Keanu smiled gently. "Acting was never my only passion. For 30 years, I have been secretly studying with the greatest mathematicians and physicists in the world. I felt compelled to learn, driven by something I could not understand until today." He gestured to the whiteboard covered in glowing mathematical symbols. "These equations are not just formulas. They are the language that describes how reality itself works. And solving them will give humanity access to technologies that can change everything." Professor Martinez stepped forward, his face showing the internal struggle between his loyalty to the shadow organization and his growing understanding of what was at stake. "Keanu, you do not understand the consequences of what you are doing. There are forces that will do anything to stop this knowledge from becoming public." "I know," Keanu replied. "I can sense them outside this building. But some knowledge is too important to hide, even if it makes powerful people uncomfortable." Tony Garcia was still recording everything on his phone, despite the ongoing technical difficulties. "What kind of technologies are you talking about?" Keanu moved to one of the university computers and began typing rapidly. The screen filled with calculations that seemed to solve themselves as he worked. Clean energy that could power entire cities without pollution. Medical techniques that could cure diseases we thought were incurable. Transportation systems that could take us to other planets in days instead of years. As he typed, the computer screen began to glow with the same energy as the whiteboard. Other computers around the campus started displaying similar equations, as if the mathematical understanding was spreading through the network. But most importantly, Keanu continued, these equations prove that every human being has the potential for this kind of mathematical thinking. Society has just taught us to believe we are not smart enough. Lisa Carter felt something awakening in her mind as she watched Keanu work. Complex mathematical concepts that had confused her for years suddenly made perfect sense. "I can understand it," she whispered in amazement. "The calculus that seemed impossible yesterday, I can see how it all fits together now." Other students were experiencing the same phenomenon. Tony Garcia found himself solving equations in his head that he had never learned. Even students who had struggled with basic math were suddenly grasping advanced concepts. Outside the building, Agent Clark was receiving increasingly urgent orders through his radio. "Agent Clark, Director Shaw wants immediate containment. Move in now." But Clark could see through the window that something extraordinary was happening inside the lecture hall. The students were not just witnessing a mathematical demonstration, they were becoming part of it. Their faces showed the wonder and excitement of people discovering abilities they never knew they had. On the Discovery, Dr. Amanda Brooks was monitoring the situation with growing excitement. "Captain, the energy readings from Earth are incredible. It is not just one individual anymore. The mathematical awakening is spreading to other humans in the immediate area." Captain Porter studied the data on his screens. "Commander Kyrath, is this what you expected to happen?" The alien's golden eyes seemed to shine with approval. "Yes, Captain Porter. This is how true mathematical consciousness spreads through a species. One awakened individual can trigger the dormant abilities in others, creating what we call a cascade effect. What does that mean for humanity? Porter asked. It means your species is passing the test more successfully than we had hoped. Most civilizations take centuries to achieve what your people are accomplishing in hours. Back in the lecture hall, Keanu had finished entering the equations into the computer system. The university's entire network was now pulsing with mathematical energy, and the effects were spreading beyond the campus. "Look outside," Lisa Carter called out, pointing to the windows. The students crowded around the windows and saw something amazing. People throughout the city were stopping in the middle of their daily activities, looking up at the sky with expressions of sudden understanding. Construction workers were sketching complex geometric patterns in the dirt. Office workers were writing equations on napkins during their lunch breaks. "The awakening is spreading," Keanu said with satisfaction. "Every person who sees these equations, even secondhand through video or photographs, is having their mathematical consciousness activated." Professor Martinez received an urgent call on his secret phone. Director Shaw's voice was sharp with panic. "Martinez, what is happening out there?" "We are getting reports of mathematical phenomena occurring in major cities around the world. The cascade effect has begun," Martinez replied, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. "The equations are spreading through social media, news broadcasts, and word of mouth. There is no way to contain this anymore." Shaw's response was immediate and harsh. "Then we move to the final protocol. Eliminate the source before this spreads any further." Martinez looked at Keanu, who was now helping other students solve advanced equations with ease and joy. For the first time in years, Martinez remembered why he had become a mathematics professor in the first place. It was not for power or control, but for the pure love of discovery and learning. "I cannot do that," Martinez said into the phone. "What we are witnessing is the next step in human evolution. To stop it would be to doom our entire species to mediocrity." He ended the call and threw the phone across the room, where it shattered against the wall. The students stared at him in surprise. "Professor Martinez?" Lisa Carter asked uncertainly. "My real name is Gregory Martinez," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I have been working for an organization that has spent decades suppressing human potential, but I cannot be part of that anymore." Keanu nodded approvingly. "Sometimes the greatest courage is admitting that you have been wrong and choosing to do what is right." Outside the building, Agent Clark made his own decision. Instead of leading his team into the lecture hall to arrest Keanu, he stepped back from the door and spoke into his radio. "This is Agent Clark. I am calling off the containment operation. What we have here is not a threat to national security. It is the greatest opportunity in human history." His radio exploded with angry responses from his superiors, but Clark turned it off and walked away from the building. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. Inside the lecture hall, Keanu was putting the finishing touches on the universal equation. As he wrote the final symbols, the entire room filled with brilliant light. Every person present felt their minds expanding, their understanding of mathematics and reality reaching levels they had never imagined possible. "It is complete," Keanu announced. "Humanity now has access to the universal equations, but more importantly, every human being now has the ability to understand and use these equations for the benefit of all." Above them, the alien ship began to descend toward the campus. Commander Kyrath's voice filled the lecture hall through some unknown technology. "Congratulations, humans of Earth. Your species has passed the test and is now ready to join the Galactic Mathematics Society. The real adventure is just beginning." The alien ship touched down gently on the campus quad, its surface shimmering with the same mathematical symbols that covered the whiteboards in the lecture hall. Students and faculty members emerged from buildings across the campus, no longer afraid but filled with curiosity and wonder. Commander Kyrath stepped out of the ship, followed by several other Zephyrian mathematicians. They were tall and elegant beings, their golden skin reflecting light in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical sequences. Despite their alien appearance, there was something peaceful and welcoming about their presence. In the lecture hall, Keanu finished writing the final symbol of the universal equation. As soon as the marker left the whiteboard, every screen on Earth that was displaying the equations began to pulse with brilliant light. Television broadcasts, computer monitors, and even simple calculators all became conduits for the mathematical awakening. Lisa Carter felt her mind expanding in ways she had never imagined possible. Complex theories that had seemed like foreign languages just hours before now made perfect sense. She could see the mathematical patterns that governed everything from the movement of planets to the growth of flowers. "This is incredible," she said, her voice filled with amazement. "I can understand quantum mechanics, relativity theory, even concepts that do not have names yet." Tony Garcia was experiencing the same transformation. As a journalism student, he had always struggled with math, but now he could see how mathematics connected to every aspect of human knowledge. "I can see how to solve the energy crisis," he said excitedly. "The equations show us how to build clean fusion reactors that could power the entire world." Professor Martinez, who had spent his career believing that mathematical genius was limited to a chosen few, watched in wonder as his own students surpassed his understanding in minutes. "I was so wrong," he whispered. "We have been teaching mathematics as if it were a foreign language, when it is actually humanity's native tongue." Outside the building, Agent Clark was witnessing similar transformations among his fellow government agents. Instead of following orders to suppress the mathematical awakening, they were pulling out notebooks and smartphones to write down the equations they could suddenly understand. "Sir," one of his agents called out, "I think I know how to build a faster-than-light communication system. The math is right here in my head." Clark smiled. "Then let's start building it." Director Shaw, watching the situation unfold from her office in Washington, realized that her decades of work to suppress human potential had failed completely. The mathematical awakening was spreading too fast to contain. News reports were coming in from every major city on Earth, showing ordinary people solving advanced scientific problems and designing revolutionary technologies. In desperation, Shaw activated her final protocol. "All units, this is Code Black. We are moving to eliminate the primary source. Prepare for extreme measures." But her agents were no longer listening. Across the country, government facilities dedicated to suppressing human abilities were being abandoned as their staff experienced their own mathematical awakenings. Commander Kyrath entered the lecture hall, moving with grace despite his considerable height. His golden eyes swept across the room, taking in the transformed students and the glowing equations on the whiteboards. "Remarkable," he said in his melodic voice. "Your species has achieved in one day what typically takes other civilizations several years to accomplish." Keanu turned from the whiteboard to face the alien commander. "We had help. The equations seemed to teach themselves once I started writing them." "That is the nature of the universal equations," Kyrath explained. "They contain not just mathematical knowledge, but the wisdom to use that knowledge responsibly. Your species has proven that it possesses the compassion and cooperation necessary to handle such power." Lisa Carter stepped forward nervously. "What happens now? Do we get to meet other alien civilizations?" Kyrath's expression showed what might have been amusement. "Young human, you will do much more than meet them. Earth will become one of the leading members of the Galactic Mathematics Society. Your species' unique approach to problem-solving will benefit civilizations throughout the galaxy." On the Discovery, Captain Porter was receiving congratulations from alien civilizations across the galaxy. The ship's communication systems were flooded with welcome messages and invitations to visit distant star systems. "Dr. Brooks," Porter called out, "we are being invited to join a fleet of exploration vessels from 12 different species. They want to show us the wonders of galactic civilization." Amanda Brooks smiled as she studied the star charts being transmitted from the alien fleet. "Captain, I think our mission just got a lot more interesting." Back on Earth, the mathematical awakening was producing miraculous results. In hospitals around the world, doctors were suddenly understanding how to cure diseases that had puzzled medical science for centuries. Engineers were designing new transportation systems that could move people across continents in minutes. Environmental scientists were calculating solutions to climate change that seemed impossible just hours before. Professor Martinez approached Keanu with tears in his eyes. I owe you an apology. I let my pride and fear blind me to the incredible potential of the human mind. Keanu placed a gentle hand on the professor's shoulder. Everyone deserves a chance to grow and learn. That includes professors as well as students. Tony Garcia was frantically taking notes as new ideas flooded his mind. I need to get this story out to the world. People need to know that this awakening is not just about mathematics. It is about realizing that humans are capable of so much more than we ever believed. The story is already spreading, Lisa Carter said, showing him her phone. Social media has exploded with videos of people solving impossible problems and building amazing inventions. The whole world is waking up. Commander Kyreth gathered the humans around him. The Galactic Mathematics Society would like to make Earth our newest council world. This means your planet will become a center of learning and discovery for the entire galaxy. What does that involve? Keanu asked. Universities from across the galaxy will establish campuses on Earth. Your scientists will work alongside researchers from civilizations that have been studying the universe for millions of years. And humans will be invited to explore and settle on worlds beyond your solar system. The alien commander paused and looked directly at Keanu. We would also like to offer you the position of humanity's first cosmic mathematics ambassador. Your role would be to help other species understand the unique perspective that humans bring to mathematical thinking. Keanu considered the offer, for a moment, then smiled. I accept, but only if Professor Martinez agrees to be my co-ambassador. His experience teaching mathematics will be invaluable. Martinez looked shocked. But I tried to stop you. I worked for people who wanted to suppress human potential. And then you chose to do the right thing, Keanu replied. That kind of growth and courage is exactly what we will need as we join galactic civilization. As the sun set over Berkeley University, the campus was filled with beings from a dozen different worlds, all eager to learn from and teach the newly awakened humans. The lecture hall where it all began had been transformed into a center of learning where students from across the galaxy worked together on mathematical problems that would shape the future of the universe. Lisa Carter and Tony Garcia had become the first human students to enroll in the Galactic Mathematics program. They spent their days learning from alien professors and their evenings teaching human approaches to problem solving to students from distant star systems. Agent Clark had founded the Human Potential Liberation Agency, dedicated to helping people around the world discover and develop their newly awakened abilities. The shadow organization that had once suppressed human capabilities had been completely disbanded, its former agents now working to unlock human potential instead of limiting it. The mathematical awakening had spread to every corner of Earth. Children who had struggled with basic arithmetic were now designing space stations. Adults who had been told they were not math people were calculating solutions to problems that had puzzled scientists for generations. In classrooms around the world, the teaching of mathematics was revolutionized. Instead of memorizing formulas and procedures, students learned to see the patterns and connections that made mathematics the universal language of reality. Every lesson became an adventure in discovery, and every student became a mathematician. Keanu stood in the lecture hall where his journey had begun, looking at the equations that still glowed on the whiteboards. Professor Martinez joined him, both men reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. Do you think we are ready for all of this? Martinez asked. Keanu smiled, his eyes twinkling with the same warmth that had made him beloved by movie audiences around the world. I think humanity has always been ready. We just needed someone to show us that we could be excellent to each other and to the universe itself. Outside the windows, the lights of alien ships filled the night sky, not as conquerors, but as friends and teachers. The mathematical awakening had given humanity not just new knowledge, but a new place among the stars. And it had all started with a calculus professor who learned that mocking someone's intelligence